So this is really cool. I remember I was at the house when I just made this, and David, oh lovely David Waite from Imagination Crafts came down. He was doing some shows, and he got hold of this and he went like that. What? How does that work? And I could see him going like this, because if you look, when I push this back in, the image just isn't coloured in. It's just the teal card behind it. And then when I pull it out, it becomes coloured. It's clever that, isn't it? So the only part of this I haven't done is the colouring in. All right, but I'm going to explain to you how this mechanism works and how you line everything up. Look at that. And everything's been done on the Scan and Cut, even drawing on the acetate. So you're going to need a permanent pen. Now I use a black ultra-fine nib Sharpie, and it draws perfectly on top of it. And I draw it probably 2 or 3 times just to make sure I get that intensity of colour. So get some really good weight. Don't use a flimsy acetate, use a proper construction weight acetate, and use a Sharpie pen in your universal pen holder. That's the best way to draw on the acetate. So then we have all these different pieces. So we have our card base, and we have the front, the middle slider, the acetate slider, which I've drawn this little monster on, and the back slider, and then a back section and a front section. All right, so get everything cut. And again, you might want to make a little template and write on what's what. All right, so the first piece that goes in is the middle slider. The back slider and the acetate have the tabs on the left hand side. And if you forget, if you look at the file on your Scan and Cut, the way that the file goes is the way that it's positioned on the actual mat. So when you bring the file up for the acetate in the back, the tabs will be on the left and this pull tab will be on the right. The one for your middle one is the other way around. So your middle one just has this straight piece here, and it has the tabs on the right hand side here. So the first thing that you're going to do, there is a little, it looks like it might be a perforation line here and here. It's not to fold, it's just to show you where to put the glue. So you put it on these 2 tabs here, okay? And it's a little bit tricky because you've got to get sliders in after you've glued bits down. So I'll make it as simple as I can. Not for you, but for me as well. Please don't think I'm calling you simple, because I'm really not. I'm going to turn the front over, and I'm going to turn the middle over, and I'm going to glue these 2 tabs into here, okay? And I'm making sure that it's lined up, because I've got a wider bit here and a narrower bit here. So I'm making sure that I'm lining it right up to the top. I'm making sure that you haven't got a gap here, okay? Now it might be that you want to just cut a little bit of that off, but just see how you get on. So I've glued that in, and now when I turn it back over, that's my middle slider and it's glued here, okay? So at this point, what I would do is put your acetate slider in. Now, of course, we've glued this in, so you're going to have to just kind of slide it in at a bit of an angle, I think. If I can manage to get that in. Let me have a look. Right, so what I'm going to do is just undo that bottom bit. That's better. And then I can slide that in there like that. It's working out the best way to do these things. So that's going to slide in there. So I've now got my acetate slider. You can't really see that. I should have done this the other way around colour-wise. Let me just tear this so that you can see. So underneath my acetate slider, there, you can see now I've got my acetate slider in there. Oh, Melanie, how stupid. Oh, right. You can glue your middle slider in, and you don't need to pull it back to get your acetate, because you put your acetate one in from the other side. Oh dear. Right. Turn it over, glue your middle one in place. Take your top slider, your acetate slider, and with the tab, put the tab into here on top of that middle slider like that, and it pulls through. That's hilarious. Oh dear me. You know, sometimes the obvious things, yeah, especially at my age, honestly, hilarious. Right, so I've got that one in now, and then I can take the back slider and I can just put it over the back of there like that. Now, the way to stick your coloured image down is to pull this out, and your coloured image is going to go on here directly underneath your acetate one. Okay, so put them both in place, make sure that this is lined up, but don't glue this down. Lift this up, get your drawn coloured piece, line it up on there with some wet glue and wiggle it so that it's directly underneath the acetate one. So if I pull this up, bring this in and show you. If I lift this up now, and I'll just bring it up here, you can see that my coloured image there is directly underneath my acetate one here, okay? And then when you push it back in, the coloured one goes behind the middle slider and the acetate one comes on top of the middle slider. Okay, so I'll just show you that again. You pull that out underneath there, lift it up this way, you've got your coloured image there and your acetate directly on top. And when you push it back in, your acetate slider goes on top and your coloured slider goes underneath. Okay, so once you've got that bit in, then we can turn this over and we're going to make sure that these are lined up. And the easiest way to make sure that these are lined up is to lift this one off, put adhesive on here, so your red liner tape again, because you're working on acetate and you don't want the glue all squidging out. I'm still laughing about that. In my head, I'm still laughing about that, trying to get that slider thing in when you've still got an open end. And I think that's, to be fair to me, I think that's because when I did this, I did it with written instructions, and the written instructions were really complicated, and I'm still thinking about those written instructions instead of thinking about just doing the video. But that just makes me smile. I hope you're all having a giggle about that, because I certainly am. Right, turn that over, and you can see now that these tabs that you stuck down originally are stopping these acetate tabs from going anywhere. So that's what stops that pull mechanism. So now we're going to take this, and remember this will have your coloured image on, and I'm going to take the backing off here first, otherwise it's not going to stick with that on. Oh dear, I think it's one of those days where I need chocolate. Chocolate makes my brain work better. That's my excuse, and I'm sticking to it. So I'm going to line this up. I'm going to line this tab up now, because as long as you've made sure that the tabs are lined up when you stick your colour image down, then everything will line up together, okay? But you do not glue these two together, all right? But you slide it back in, and when you're happy with the positioning, you then turn this over, and now you start to glue down, all right? So we're going to put red liner tape on here. So on the white tabs here, like that, and snip that off. And red liner tape on here, like that, and snip that bit off. Okay, I'm going to stick those bits down first, because then I know that everything's in its place. Children will love this one. And then you're going to fold everything over, and then you have a back piece that's going to stick over the top. So make sure that the thicker part of the back is at the bottom. So turn that over, and that's going to glue onto there like that. So I'm going to risk it with red liner tape, even though I'm not very good with it, because it'll glue instantly. So make sure that your perforation lines are well scored down, because you want it to be as flat as possible. And then I would use a thicker red liner tape than this. I would use one that's the same width as the tabs, but this is all I've got right now, so we'll make do. So one strip on there, I'll do another strip on here, and I'm doing this right to the edge just so that it doesn't move about. So I'm going in there like that, and cut that off there. like that. Get rid of that bit, and then another piece along here. Oh, I don't want to double that up. I need to get that little bit out there, otherwise. Little tinker. I don't want to cut it off. If in doubt, get the scissors out. Right, so that's now going to go on there. So, belts and braces again. I'm going to take this off. I'm going to put a little bit of wet glue on top of there, just because it'll give me that wiggle room if I need it, when I can get this thing off. Red liner tape. There's a few things I want to reinvent when I retire, and this backing for this is one of them, because it drives me bonkers. Right, so just checking again that I've got the wider part at the bottom. Wet glue on top of here. Get rid of that skin. And there we go, just creates like a little plug. And then on here, and on here, and then that's going to go over there. So I'm going to start by lining up this part, and then I know that this part will push in there. That's probably the fiddliest bit of all, actually. And then that is going to glue onto the front of my card. Now, I used foam tape just to be able to give that slider. And again, with your sliders, you've just got to use the mechanism a few times, okay? Because it's not just going to be really smooth. Can you see now? Oh, it's much smoother now. You've just got to get that mechanism going. There you go. And then I'm going to put a little bit of foam tape and just use a narrow foam tape around here, just to give it a little bit of height on the card front, or not, depending on what you want. The one thing you must make sure that you do, though, is put your coloured image flat. Don't use any foam or any glue gel on your coloured image on this one underneath here, because you don't want to create any bulk in that slider at all. All right, so just think about what that mechanism is going to do, and think about the levels that you need it to be at, so you don't want any foam on there. So if you want to add dimension, this is the time to add it in. And then I'm going to make sure my card opens the right way, and I'm going to position that on there. Okay, and then you decorate it accordingly. There is also there are some mats and layers for your sliders, but again, use a thinner card and glue them flat, or don't, whichever you prefer. And then there's an extra little piece to go over there to cover over the glue. And then the recipient will just slide this and you'll have your colour picture. So I'm going to bring this one in so that you can see what I mean. So I just decorated it. This is watercolour card again, and this time I used Distress Oxides to colour it. So if you haven't got watercolour pencils, but you've got inks, any water-based ink, just put a bit on your glass mat, pick it up with a brush and colour in. It's not about the colouring in this. It's about that mechanism and how you make these fabulous cards. So just blue there, coloured there, blue there, coloured there. And like I said, we're not reinventing the wheel. These have been around for ages, but normally they're dies or templates. So we've done them for you on a USB with cutting files. And I think that will delight anybody in your family, young or not so young.